Our next presenter is Dr. Dan McCool, who received his Ph.D. in political science from the University of Arizona. He is the director of the Environmental and Sustainable Studies program and a professor in the political science department. He has served as a consultant for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the United States Department of Justice, and the Southwestern Center for Environmental Research and Policy. Please welcome Dr. Dan McCool.
Thank you. I can see the lighting is set up for people who have PowerPoint, not necessarily old-fashioned notes here, but we'll see if I can see it. It's a pleasure being here. I do research on restoring rivers. You can't restore the West without also restoring the rivers. And today I'm going to actually talk primarily about the impediments to that. Why don't we just go out and restore all the rivers? The problem is there is a political reality in the way. And one of the great things about being a tenured professor is that I can say outrageous things and I get fired for it. So you know that old child's story about the emperor has no clothes? You know, everybody's in the crowd and the emperor's in the parade, but the emperor has no clothes, but everybody's afraid to say something. You know, it's the emperor, right? But he doesn't have any clothes on. If there had been a tenured professor in the crowd, he or she would have said, that guy's naked, right there. That guy has no clothes on. But that's an observation of objective reality that is sometimes upsetting to people, right? And then every once in a while, we do add a little subjective editorializing, you know, like, man, that is disgusting, get some clothes on that guy, or, you know, do some sit-ups or something there, buddy. So I'm going to do some cold, hard truths today. These are the kinds of things that you'll never see a politician say, but they're all true, all right? We're going to go through 9 of them. The first one is that all dams are temporary. Every dam, sooner or later, is going to come down. So it's going to have to be removed or replaced. There are 80,000 dams in America. Every one of them has a lifespan. In fact, a large percentage of them are already older than their engineered lifespan. Every one of them has to be replaced or removed. The cost of building the 80,000 dams to start with was astronomical. The cost of replacing them all and rebuilding them all is off the charts. It's a cost that would mean significant zero-sum considerations. If you want to spend billions and billions of dollars rebuilding and replacing dams, that's billions and billions of dollars you don't have for education or infrastructure or security or all the other things that we like in life. So that's the choice. 80,000 dams, every one of them is coming down sooner or later and will have to be replaced. Second one, I'm not a math professor, but I figured this one out. You cannot have infinite growth in a finite system. Doesn't work. I've done the arithmetic. I've done the equation. It doesn't work. What that means, think about that for a while. What that means is that the fundamental foundation of our religious, economic, and cultural and social institutions are all based on a fallacy. That growth is good, that growth is inevitable, and it will serve us well. In fact, it will not. It will not serve us well. In fact, sooner or later, it's going to kill us because you cannot have infinite growth in a finite system. Let me give you an example. The governor just had this water strategy advisory team. I was a part of it. Governor said, here's your charge. In the next so many years, the population of Utah is going to double. We want you to figure out how to provide water for a doubling of the population from roughly 3 million to 6 million. To me, that's a silly question, right? Well, okay, so we figure out how to do water for 6 million. Well, what about the next doubling? 12 million? How about the doubling after 24 million? Soon, a billion? You know, tell me where your stop-off point is. And you think about this for a while. Everyone is in favor of limited and controlled growth. It just depends on how big the number gets. It's hard to find a rational person that says, yes, we could support 1 billion people in Utah. How about 24 million? Oh, how about 12 million? If I was going to set that, I'd put it at 3 million. Because I don't think under our current management regime, we don't have enough water for everybody and everything we want today. So you can't have infinite growth. It is a physical impossibility. Third, scarcity begets regulation. Nobody likes regulation. The best way to get yourself regulated is to create scarcity. And the best way to create scarcity is to dramatically increase the demand, which comes from growth, right? So as growth increases, there's a finite supply. Sooner or later, we start regulating it. And a regulation is a diminution in personal freedom. That means you have less freedom to make choices. Let me give you an example. Maybe you want to run the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. Back in 1960, you just grab an Army surplus boat, go down to the beach at Lee's Ferry, and take off. Today, there's 27,000 people that run the river through the Grand Canyon. Everything you do is minutely regulated. From what you eat, where you eat, how you go to the bathroom, what you do with that stuff, what your boat looks like, and how many people get to be around you. It's because the demand exceeded the supply. Before they went to a weighted lottery system, the waiting list got to 25 years. 25 years. That sounds pretty bad, right? Well, when there's 24 million people in Utah, that will be the fate of every public amenity. There will be a waiting list. You want to go hiking? Put your name on the list. When we get through the other 10 million, we'll get to you. Scarcity begets regulation, which reduces personal freedom. You want less government? The best way to get less government is to have less people who are consuming less. You want fewer regulations? Consume less so that we have more, relatively speaking. You don't see a lot of politicians talking about that these days. How about change? We are not experiencing just change today. We are experiencing exponential change, absolutely exponential. If you look at a whole array of environmental factors from population growth to the number of chemicals, to the depletion of the oceans, to toxic waste sites, the curve is exponential. The problem is our social, political, and religious institutions do not change exponentially. So the gap between where our institutions are going and where reality is literally growing by the minute. We have not kept up. You cannot fight change, especially now that it's exponential. You can only adapt to change. And that means changing laws and policies that may have served us well at one point in the past. They do not serve us well today. Let me just give you an illustration. I like this. Suppose we have an earthquake and we discover a large barrel of water here. We're stuck in this room. The roof collapsed out there, we can't get out. What would we do with this large barrel of water? We'd have to have water while we're stuck in here. Well, we'd punch a hole in it, right? Put a tap in it and start draining off water to give to people. Then we discovered that there's a few hundred people over here that have survived, and they come in. So we punch another hole in the barrel, say, well, this is the water for you. And then it turns out there were people on the third floor that survived, and they show up, and we punch another hole in the barrel. We go, oh, this will be water for you, and so on, and so on. Eventually, what we're going to do is drain the barrel of water at an exponential rate, right? The more taps we put in it, the lower the water goes at a faster rate. In other words, the strategy that initially kept us alive is now a strategy that's going to kill us all. That's where we are in water policy today. And we have a lot of people running around saying, let's put more taps in the barrel. Why? Well, it worked in 1900. I guess it'll work today. But it doesn't, because everything's different today. The fifth point, people, there's no more water. I'm sorry, there is no more water. There's no large untapped reservoir or stream or river someplace where people are going, sure, go ahead and take this water. That's great, we don't want it, right? I was on a panel with a guy from the Central Arizona project last year. And I made the remark that I think the CAP, the Central Arizona Project, will soon become America's longest skateboard park, because there's not going to be any water. There's not going to be any water in it. He wasn't incredibly appreciative of that comment. But he said, no, the key is augmentation, augmentation. What a nice word. That's so cool. Augmentation. Wow. What do you mean? Well, augmentation. Well, what do you mean? Well, we're going to get more water. Where are you going to get some more water? We don't know, but we're going to get more water. Well, like the Great Lakes, the North Pole. What are you going to do here, right? He's not sure, but he just knows that somewhere, someplace, there's this huge untapped reservoir of water just waiting to be shipped to Arizona. I'm sorry, there isn't. There isn't. And people say, well, we'll build a pipeline, right? We have some people here in Utah talking about building pipelines. What's a pipeline do? Does it create water? No, it doesn't create a single drop of water. All a pipeline does is move water and create two classes of people. Those at the beginning, who are the losers, and those at the end, who are the winners. The losers have less water, and the winners have more water. So you just limited growth and potential wherever you tap in that pipeline. Bear River Pipeline, let's create more growth along the Wasatch Front down here. Let's emasculate the potential in the Bear River Valley, right? We're taking from somebody. It does not create any more water. And then it has some other terrible effects that we'll talk about in a minute here. 6, inexpensive water is an oxymoron. We are used to it. We think it's a godsend. We think it's something we deserve. You don't deserve it. You shouldn't have it. It's irrational, and you need to start paying for it. And you are paying for it already. You're just paying for it in inimical ways and through taxes and other unseen and indirect ways. Inexpensive water creates inefficiencies, it creates misallocations, and it distorts the marketplace. Cannot exist. Under conditions of scarcity, inexpensive water becomes a terrible problem. And we're there. We are there right now. 7, what we have today in the American West is water polarization. We hear a lot about income polarization today, right? The 1%ers They've got all the money. Maybe that's why you don't have so much money, right? Well, we have the same thing in water. And today it's farmers. Farmers are about 1% of the population, and they have 80% of the water. Now, I am not anti-farm. I love to eat. If you like to eat, you should be pro-agriculture. Kind of makes sense, right? I'm just stating a fact here, right? And in the long run, that is going to change. Whether you like it or not, that is going to change. You can't have that level of polarization of an essential resource without change. It's going to happen. And that leads me to the eighth brutal truth. Someday, we will have West-wide water marketing. Water marketing is coming. We are going to sell and buy water. Someday, a farmer in the Uinta Valley who gets tired of growing hay and alfalfa because it doesn't pay very well and you have to work incredibly hard to produce that, is going to call up all the cities in the lower basin and say, what's the best price you can get me, and get them in a bidding war. And one day Las Vegas or Los Angeles will be paying him $10,000 an acre fee. And this farmer will become rich. And that is going to happen. I know it's upsetting to some people, but it is inevitable. You know the old saw, water flows uphill to money? That actually is not true right now. In fact, much of our water is allocated for activities that actually have a very poor rate of return. I was just down in Las Vegas, went down to, lose some money. God, I can't stand that place. But it's kind of like going to a zoo full of criminals or something. You just walk around with your mouth hanging. Oh, I can't believe this place. This is just amazing. But the best part about the whole place is the fountains at Bellagio. Anybody here seen that? If you calculate the exchange of how much water, and it's all recycled water, how much water they're using, and the economic return per gallon for the Bellagio fountains, it's ultra high. It's very, very good. If you compare that to growing corn in the Colorado River Basin, which we still do, grow corn out here, there's no comparison. Just absolutely no comparison. So we're going to see water marketing. And the ninth one, I know this one's a tough pill to swallow, but prior appropriation is an anachronism. That's the fundamental basis of Western law. It does not serve us anymore. It's hopelessly out of date. It does not comport with modern society or our needs today. It is going to change. I'm sorry, it's going to change. It has to change. Prior appropriation is, my nickname for it is the to hell with you doctrine, right? I got mine. I'm going to pour water in my swimming pool or my crop or my surplus soybean crop, and if you're downstream and you have a junior right, I don't care if you die, right? That's the essence of prior appropriation. In a crowded West with 30 million people, you can't have that attitude. It doesn't work anymore. It worked at one point, it made sense in 1880, it doesn't make sense today. In fact, it's inimical to our progress as a society. So, will politicians deal with these problems I've outlined effectively? Let's see a show of hands. How many people think politicians? Well, my hand's not up either. And I've been studying politicians for a long time here. So, what's the result? What do we get? I call it the Katrina Syndrome. What's the Katrina Syndrome? That's a human-made disaster in the making. You know it's going to happen. It's inevitable. We created it, and we just sit back and we watch it happen. Absolutely watch it happen. Of course, that's named after Katrina that hit New Orleans. There were people who knew exactly, they predicted that exactly. They were running around saying, this city is going to flood to 20 feet. And people said, no, 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 it can't, because it never has. It hasn't happened in the past, so it won't happen in the future, right? That's the Katrina Syndrome. Let me give you some examples, and these are profound. We're talking about restoring the West. Here's a good place to start, all right? Let me give you 5 examples of the Katrina Syndrome in action. The first one's Lake Powell and the Colorado River. The whole management plan for the Colorado River is a goner. The 1922 Colorado River Compact makes no sense anymore. Lake Powell, it's gone to Deadpool, if not in my lifetime, in your lifetime, if you're younger than me. And probably 99% of the people in the room are younger than me, so you're gonna see this happen. It's a management regime that has failed totally, all right? It's gonna happen. Deadpool, Lake Powell. So let's, build a pipeline to it. Oh, well, that's a good idea. Second, the Ogallala Aquifer. It runs from the Canadian border to the Texas Panhandle. It's going dry. It's going to dry up. Inevitable. Everyone agrees. So are farmers dramatically cutting back? Are they reducing how much water they're mining from that? No. They're just digging deeper and more wells. They're actually precipitating the disaster that will befall them. It's inevitable. You got a cheap sandwich out there with some weed in it, probably was grown with water out of the Ogallala Aquifer. Say goodbye to that. Say goodbye to the breadbasket of America. The Sacramento River Delta. It's the next New Orleans. And they're building subdivisions right now under this ground has subsided, so they're actually building under the water level of the river. The next mega flood that comes down the Sacramento River is going to flood thousands and thousands of homes. Did that stop the developers? No, they're out there building it right now. They're doing it right now. 4, and here's my favorite, Las Vegas. Las Vegas. Let's build a city of 2 million people in a place where there's no water. What a great idea that was. And also no police. Oh, even better idea. The real reason why we have Las Vegas there was someday, thank you, someday there's going to be a big sign in Las Vegas that says, welcome to Las Vegas, bring your own water. They get 90% of their water from Lake Mead. I was just down at Lake Mead. It's half full. It's doomed. It looks real bad. We can buy a few more years by draining Lake Powell. That may be a decade or 2, but that's about it. So Las Vegas is a city living on borrowed time. That is a disaster that is going to happen. And 5th, the Great Salt Lake. We've already lowered the lake level 12 feet with diversions. We're planning to build the Bear River Project to make, that's like pouring poison into a wound. When the Great Salt Lake dries up, I want you to go home and Google 2 things, okay, when you're done here. Any students here who are taking this because they have to because they're in a class? I'm sure there's nobody in here like that, right? I didn't want to be here, but I have to. Go home and Google Aral C, A-R-A-L-C. And when you're done looking at that, Google Owens Lake. You want to see the future of Ogden, Utah, where I live? You want to see the future of Salt Lake City? Look at the pictures of the Aral C area and Owens Lake. That's the future if we drain the Great Salt Lake. So are they talking about putting more and more water back in the lake so it doesn't dry out? No, they're doing just the opposite. Just the opposite. What a disaster in the making. So why do we need river restoration today? Because that is the only way to actually deal with these problems. We have messed up the nest, and we got to put the nest back to compensate for all the bad things we've done. That's the only way we can do that. We do not have a water crisis in the American West and Utah today. We have a water management crisis. That's the real heart and soul of this problem. What we really need is a new water ethic, and it has to reflect these changes, these realities that I've talked about. The water ethic is about collaborative water management. Water is a human right, a consciousness that we all live downstream, and we got to learn how to think like an ecosystem. Think like an ecosystem. When we learn to do that, we can solve these problems. We really can. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Is there time for a question? We can have questions, but I know I'm standing between you and food, which is never a good option. But
we have 5 or 6 minutes for questions. Anyone has any?
Yes, please.
I was wondering, you mentioned the like water right appropriations. I was wondering if you had any grand ideas about how to get the public like to support doing away with those.
Right. Here's the. Am I supposed to talk at the microphone? Because you're okay. I'm sorry. It's so hard to stand in one place. Here's the essential factor. How do you get people to change? Well, they change when they turn on the tap and no water comes out. All right? Everybody turns into a water reformer when they don't get water. So you can ask them to be thoughtful, prescient, study the issues, and they say, no, I don't want to give up anything. I don't want to change. Don't ask me to pay taxes. Don't ask me to give up anything or make any sacrifices. And then they turn the fountain or the faucet on and nothing comes out, and they go, oh, what do I have to do? Right? That's it. Yes, please.
I want to take that question a little bit farther. So you talked about prior appropriation, and so we have to do away with it. So what's the alternative? Because it's probably not riparians in the West. So what's the alternative?
No, I think it will look more like a riparian doctrine. It will be a doctrine of sharing and a doctrine that does not penalize farmers for actually conserving water. In fact, it will be a doctrine that rewards farmers for being uber efficient. They actually generate income from being uber efficient with their water. Under prior appropriation, they're basically penalized. So it actually, I think we can do this in a way, and I have great respect for farmers. I am not anti-agriculture. We can do this in a way that I think will make them very wealthy, and I'm totally happy with that. They got the water, we need it, let's pay them a handsome price and modify the law accordingly. I'm totally cool with that. Yes. Yes.
So in the last month...
Oh, I thought you were going to say stop.
Over the course of the last month here at Utah State, we invited parties from both sides of the Cache Water Conservancy District issue to come and sort of debate the situation. And I'm wondering what your opinion is on that as a tenured professor.
Well, there are about 400 special districts in Utah. Most of them are water districts, but there's special districts for, there's probably a special districts for, monitors and bright lights or something that's just all over the place. And the reason why states love to create special districts is that by the state constitution, we have to have a balanced budget, but districts don't. So when you hear state politicians say, I balance the state budget every year, well, first of all, it's required. Second, that's not really true. The debt is just hidden in special districts. So I think the best thing we can do with special districts is to democratize them. And their leaders are elected, and they cannot levy taxes without a vote. I think that'd be the smartest thing we could do. I'd love to see water districts do away with the property tax subsidy. It just hides the cost of water, makes them inefficient, makes us think we're getting cheap water when we're actually getting screwed. We should do away with that. And then if they wanted more tax money, they'd have to go to the people who actually pay taxes and say, do you want to pay more taxes? Like $30 billion, which is what the water districts are asking for. That's billion with a B, not million, billion. Would you like to pay $30 billion more in taxes? I think the public might have an opinion on that. And it might be different from what the water districts want. I'd love to see that process democratized. Did I answer your question?
Sort of.
Sort of? Okay, well, you know, I still have to keep my job, of course, right?
I'm afraid we're going to have to finish. It's time for
Okay, are we done?
Thank you very